Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mignot, CEO of the experience agency D-Flash. Each week, I bring in a great business leader who's doing some game-changing work, and this week's episode is going to be a fun, wild ride. I'm talking with Terry Young, founder and CEO of the super innovative agency / consultancy, Sparks and Honey, and they do phenomenal work. It's going to be a fantastic conversation. Take a listen. Hey, Terry. Great to have you on the show.
Hey, Laura. How are you?
Good. It's a lovely summer day here in New York where it's 1,000 degrees. And
maybe 2,000. It's like walking into a sauna,
right? And it's bless air conditioning. But, you know, whenever we start off, it's always the same first question. And I'm always fast dead still to this day. 60 episodes in to what folks have to say. And so I'm sure as you will be no different. So Terry, what was your first job?
So my first real job was in high school, and I was a bag boy for the local grocery store. I grew up in small town Kentucky, and I got a summer job, and then I think I kept it on the weekends throughout high school. Wasn't I don't know that it really set me on my career trajectory, but it was definitely fun. And the town I grew up in was, I don't know, maybe 20,000 people, and so you know everyone in the community. And I don't know, that day that they would come in and you would bag up the groceries, and they'd give you a $5 tip for bagging the groceries. So it was kind of fun.
Awesome. So you learned how to be the good customer service person, build relationships because obviously it was a local town.
Yes.
But also scale it because you kept it for years. So you see, it works.
And work for the tips. I tell people I used to always let my grandmother know that I was going to be when I was going to be working, because she would always come in and she'd give me a little extra tip. So it made it all that much better,
See, so it's all about how to market your services correctly to the right kind of audience that will give you the most value.
That's right.
That does work. So how do you get from a small town in Kentucky to be working for one of the most innovative companies and founding one of the most innovative companies in our industry today? What's the Terry story?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually appreciate that question, because sometimes I ask myself the same question. It's like, I think when if you think about the middle of America and you think about small town, rural America, and we have plenty of discussions in our political environment of people looking at this, there are a lot of reasons to stay put. There are lots of advantages that you may not have that keep you from, leaping forward and doing some of the things that maybe some people in big urban environments end up doing. And, I grew up just like everyone else in rural Kentucky, Western Kentucky. And when I went to school, I went to undergraduate in Kentucky, University of Louisville, so I didn't even stray that far away from home. And then after undergraduate, I took the leap from Kentucky to Texas, and I went to the University of Texas at Austin, studied advertising, which was unique in itself. And that was a catalyst. I mean, it set me on a new course. And, this ages me a little bit, but I would say when I was studying advertising, it was when the internet was starting to not explode, but emerge really. And the new internet companies were starting to be created. And I got into that space in digital at the very, very beginning. And I think the combination of being involved in digital, and I think maybe sometimes, I said I was a little bit like a tabula rasa. It was like the clean slate, because I hadn't been exposed to all the things that everyone had been exposed to, and everything was like this new, vibrant, interesting experience. And I kind of took the bull by the horns and kind of enjoyed every bit of it. And it eventually, there's a lot of story in between, led me to build and create a Sparks and Honey on that journey.
Wow. It's interesting because, like, I've spoken to a few senior levels and founder of agencies recently, and it's interesting to hear the sort of middle of America story from your perspective, because I oftentimes, especially in this current climate, we don't hear that story much. Like, East Coast liberal, West Coast liberal, middle of America, flyover country, and it's like that's not it.
Yeah.
People are people, and you can find your magic along the way in any number of ways. So Sparks and Honey, as I said, is an utterly fascinating and really amazing agency, and I've watched you guys like from when you first launched and been enthralled about what you guys are doing. And I'd love for you to explain like what that genesis was and what made you decide to go strike out and build this thing.
Yeah. So I had just a little bit about, I guess post graduating from UT, I went into the advertising industry. I started a digital startup in Texas. I was part of a digital startup there. I then went on to McKinsey, a management consulting firm, and came back from McKinsey, working in Greater China, came back into the advertising industry, worked in digital and direct and database marketing. And around 2011, I was running the New York office of Wrap, part of Omnicom. And, I decided I just wanted to explore different models, different ways of thinking about the industry that we were in. I saw lots of changes in the industry, in particular around automation, around what was happening clearly from a digital standpoint, but more from just the amount of data that we could collect on consumers and what you could actually do with that data. And I also knew that at the heart of creativity is culture, that to understand consumers, you have to understand the culture that surrounds consumers and what makes them tick, what makes them make the choices they make. And so I took all those ideas and built a business plan around what I thought at the time would be a new kind of advertising company, a company that was grounded in culture, that leveraged data, that understood how technology could automate and scale a business. I built a plan, began to look for investors, and it ended up back in Omnicom, and Omnicom did something that Omnicom doesn't typically do. They funded the startup from the ground up. So from a piece of paper, it was me and a couple other people, took that idea that was literally on the back of a couple of napkins, got it funded by a large holding company, which doesn't fund companies, usually buys other agencies. And, over 8 years have turned it not only into what I think is an incredibly innovative company. It is an innovative company that thinks about really big, long-term problems for large organizations through the lens of culture. So we're still as true today about that lens as we were 8 years ago. And we have created, and I think you've seen it, a really, really unique methodology which brings together technology and big data, but also the social sciences to understand in real time what is driving people to make certain decisions, why people are thinking about the world and the way they think about it. What's next? Where are things going to go 1 year, 5 years, 10 years down the road? What's impacting the products we buy? Why do we buy those products? And that's the model that was created. And we have a platform that we've created that allows us to do some of that work. We also have something we do every day, which we call our daily cultural briefing, where we bring people from the outside in, where we unpack culture in real time, and we're looking for patterns in the horizontal. And through those patterns, we identify little seeds that are beginning to emerge in culture, and then look at how organizations can turn those into opportunities, either new business models or new products or new campaigns that they put into the marketplace. That's at a very high level, kind of where and kind of what Sparks and Honey does.
Awesome. It's so incredible to see how far you've grown this in such a short amount of time. So I don't know if you remember this, but you actually spoke at one of our digital flash networking events when you guys had just launched. And and I remember our audience being like, what, really? Whoa. And it was so cool and so innovative. And I was like, I hope this grows because where our industry needs to go. So it's phenomenal to see how far you've taken it and how awesome it's grown now.
How many years ago was that?
Oh, I want to say it was either 2011 or 2012. It was like just when you guys started.
Oh, wow, that was so yeah. So we launched in March of 2012. Stuart Elliott of the New York Times, I remember, did a big article on us, and so that's the very, very beginning. And we were like any startup that has just a few people. We had big ideas and a very, very big vision. We had the support of Omnicom, but we had no clients, we had no methodologies, no tools or technology. And fast forward 8 years in, I mean, it's a really incredible business. It's been amazing to build it. And I even think today it's still fairly unique in the industry.
It totally is because, as our agency sort of sits at the intersection of kind of everything, we get to see so many different groups and agency clusters and what they're doing, and using culture and then, that's infused with data is still, I think, so new that agencies and other brands still haven't figured out how to catch up to it. So I still think you guys are super duper on the ahead of the curve.
Yeah. Thanks.
And so for you guys, so these data culture briefings, which are required watching if you're in our industry, especially if you can catch the Facebook Live, are fascinating. Delve in a little bit of that. How did you guys come up with saying, you know what, we need to actually not only do this, but then put it out on Facebook Live so the rest of the world can see it?
Yeah. So probably the first thing we did when we started Sparks and Honey was we put on our strategy hats to try to understand what is it that allows us to structure something that is very unstructured and messy and chaotic, which is culture and human behavior. And we built a taxonomy of culture. We call it the elements of culture, which are shifts that are going to impact us in the long term, in the short term, and then we looked at the thousands and thousands of little signals that happen every day in order to understand those shifts. And that gave us a language. That language is critical. I mean, it's really the underpinnings of Sparks and Honey today and of the platform. We've now built algorithms that have understood that language. We've trained those algorithms to speak the language, and now it helps categorize culture at scale. But when you build a system like that structures a very chaotic and messy place like culture, what you also know, what you see really quickly is that no matter what kind of tools you use, how much data you have access to, the way you interpret that data, you still aren't always going to get to the nuance of why people make the decisions they make. And that's where, we talk about big data meets the social sciences. And the culture briefing is a type of social science methodology that we almost stumbled upon, in year one, where we said we need a method by which we come together every day and look at the signals that are percolating out in the world. And we need to be able to unpack them in real time and define patterns. And in the beginning, it was useful because we thought what it was going to do, it was going to flex the muscle memory of our teams so that we become better able to identify those patterns. As it scaled, it became one time a day that allowed us to do a wide range of things. Number one, it allows us to bring the outside world into Sparks and Honey every day, and you've experienced that, and so has thousands and thousands and thousands of people around the world. And we can host in a given week, probably 200 to 300 people in our studio. Number two, it trains the algorithm. So that discussion that you watch, which is fascinating, looking at culture in the horizontal, there are data scientists that are also listening to that discussion and putting those inputs back into our platform, which is called Q, in order to train Q. The third thing it does is, we're in a business where we need to grow our business, and it is an amazing new business engine. I mean, every single week we have CEOs, brand leaders, thought leaders that are flowing into our company, and it is a great chance for us to explain our methodology and for you to see our methodology live, a very soft sell way. I think in the advertising industry and the consulting industry, we're inundated with PowerPoint slides. This is the opposite of that. This is you come and you tour the walls and you get this 1 hour in-studio show on the latest and greatest things that are happening in culture. And so as all of that came together and we got to a place where we were doing it 5 days a week and having hundreds of people come every week and thousands a month, we said we want to try to scale this beyond the walls of Sparks and Honey. And so we built a production set, and if you come in here, it's 6 cameras and a full production studio where we live cast this out on Facebook 3 days a week. And you get the first 20 minutes on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. To get the full hour, you are in studio. But even just to get a quick snapshot of what's happening in culture, it's best to be here in person. But there's many people from around the world that's not going to be able to come in studio, so you can catch a segment directly from Facebook.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I've had a chance to be there in person, and it's actually, as someone who does events for a living, there is something really unique about being there and hearing what people's thoughts are right on that moment, and especially when it's around these trends that you had no idea were happening. Like you think what's happening in the industry, and then you duck in for one of your awesome briefings, and you're like, I had no idea that sort of that meme culture was all the rage.
Yeah. I think that's part of it. It's like you're. There's 2 things that we know. One is when you do something every day, you train yourself to see patterns that other people don't. It's the same as whether it's AI or whether it's human in nature. Number 2, if you're doing it every day, I mean, you're going to be extracting little things and trends that are emerging that other people probably are letting pass by. So almost every guest has an experience like you do, that they come in, they're like, wow, I never knew that was happening. And what's the beauty of the team is that they weave together those trends over days, over weeks, and they extract those patterns in real time. And they're helping you figure out the why. Like, it's not just that we identify, something new around cannabis and beauty or esports or whatever. It's why is this important? And the why comes from seeing it over a longer period of time, because that's when it goes from a little trend that will have very little staying power to something that's going to transform an industry or disrupt a category.
Well, that's the thing. I think that's what's happening. It's one of the things when we saw with, when we did Inkwell Beach out in Kansas, that there's so many micro disruptions happening across our world in so many different industries, but they can touch and become global relatively quickly if we're actually trying to harness that information.
Definitely.
And so for you guys, obviously you guys were game changers, and I figured out when we had our chat, we had you on in 2013, and you were on where do we go from here in trend culture.
Okay, great.
So it's phenomenal in terms of the timing, and what our industry's become since 2013 when this was first a thing. What are your clients saying to you? Are they sort of like, they know that you guys are sort of like the culture experts from a data and measurable side of the house, but also because your insights are so strategic? What are your clients? How do you sort of relay that to clients in sort of digestible form for that?
So many different ways, but I would say, clients come to us to help them understand where the world is going, right? So it can be as simple as we see, meme culture and we want to understand how to tap into it, or it can be as complex as we have to think about the rise of self-care and the impact on the healthcare industry and how you guide us on that path. And most of our clients come to us so we can help them see around corners, to see the things that they may be missing. And sometimes that's very long distance. So, it's looking at where the world's going to be in 2030. And sometimes it's how do I prepare for the ad that I'm going to have at the Super Bowl in 8 months, right? And we work at both of those altitudes. We deliver the work in a multitude of ways. Some of it is in the form of traditional consulting outputs that would be in deck format. So, we're looking strategically at a particular area and we aggregate all of those insights together and we deliver that back to a client. Some of it is in the form of workshops and experiential workshops of bringing that work to life. In particular, if we're trying to do futurism scenarios. So we're imagining the beauty category in 2030, and we're looking at personas of the future, or artifacts of the future, or these different scenarios that may unfold and how a brand would fit into those scenarios. We've also developed a SaaS platform, which launched only a couple months ago, so it's very, very new. We've always used technology internally in our consulting business, but now we have a platform called Q that we're selling directly to clients. So it's almost like democratizing consulting across our client base. So anyone can log in and do a lot of what we have done at Sparks and Honey, but you can do it directly from your desktop. So that's another way we output to the world. The briefings is also a way to output to the world. It's our way of bringing the world in, and it's our way of getting insights out to our clients. I mean, we have current clients coming to briefings every single week. We have clients who watch the live broadcast on a weekly basis, sometimes in large groups. And the live briefings are directly pushed into the platform. So people that are leveraging the platform will have access to not just the most recent segments, but segments dating back for multiple years, and they can go in and slice and dice those. So there's kind of a multitude of outputs that we provide to clients, all centered around helping them understand where the world is going, based on where the world is going, how they turn that into opportunity for them. And we really try to take a long-term view. I think in this world where we live in, the next quarter and the yearly kind of analysis, which I think is very nowism focused, we want to cast a much longer net and think about what are the implications of what we do today for what we do, 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
So cool. And, it's interesting because you see a lot of these sort of brand faux pas where, they're not paying attention to the culture. That if they had just did a smidgen of research, the millions of dollars they spent developing a product or a sneaker or a handbag or a little figurine would have saved them. What do you say when you see brands like that missing the boat entirely on what's happening with culture?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, look, there's so many reasons why brands and organizations have blind spots. Sometimes those blind spots are because consumers and the way consumers think are changing more rapidly than the ability for the brands to keep pace. So this world of accelerated change. Sometimes it's internal organizational structures that prevent brands and organizations from seizing opportunities. Hence the reason we have the narrative of the entrepreneur identifying the white space and then disrupting a category, right? And we can, whether it's from Instagram to Netflix, that you go down the line of all of these different companies that have done that. I think we try to get organizations to understand that there are tools available. There are technologies that allow you to monitor what's happening in culture so that you can seize upon those opportunities. And the companies that are really good at it, they're the ones that aren't being disrupted, that they're staying ahead in their industries. I tell the story sometimes like, we've all seen what's happened with cannabis and the cannabis industry and the rise of CBD. We probably wrote, or maybe even back in 2013 when we were first together, we were probably starting research, and we did some research with one of the big publishers during that time, looking at taboo toppling. And this concept that the taboos around cannabis of smoking a joint in your basement or in the garage was eroding, and that cannabis was coming into the mainstream. And as it came into the mainstream, it was going to change things from an economic standpoint, from a political standpoint, from a society, pop culture standpoint. And fast forward, 6 years, it definitely has. But I remember clients during those times where we went to them and said, we're doing analysis on cannabis. Some clients didn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. They were very concerned about even cannabis being mentioned in a corporate document, right? There were clients who were like, we still have drug policies and drug screenings with their own organizations that prevent us from touching that. And then there were other clients that wanted to buck the system and saw the opportunity and seize upon it. And so, those are the clients that but sometimes it's internal, the things that hold you back as an organization.
Well, that's what happens. It's like, you can see them about to hit where this is going to go terribly wrong, and you're like, no, what are you doing? But then there are those brands who are able to buck the trend, but also have the agency, pardon the pun, to be let's go for this and let's actually make these investments. And we see this within our own agency in terms of we love social media more than anybody else at our firm, but the power of the one-to-one connection is still a big driving force for a lot of people with the brands they love. And so when we're telling them, listen, create something where they can actually communicate with you, because guess what ends up happening? You learn more from your client. You get to see them in person, and oftentimes you do it on social, and it's like, oh, you're like, it didn't take that much, I swear.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating to see how, it seems as if there's been a bit of a change, and, we saw a lot of this in Canada as well, that I think folks are finally, getting it and getting a clue. So we'll see where we're headed.
Yeah.
So you're in this spot right now, and you're on the forefront of all this stuff, and, you took something, you put it on a napkin, and you built it. What would you tell 25-year-old Terry now looking back on that? I know it was like 5 years ago, but still.
Yeah, 2 years ago. Let's see. Look, I think I would say that not everything is going to happen immediately. I think back to my 25-year-old self, and look, I was ambitious. I wanted to see everything happen tomorrow. And I think there's something to be said about the endurance and the marathon that we're on, and that you've got to have a lot of fun while you're building and create that balance. And you got to be in it for the long haul, because there's going to be so many different chapters, and we're students of life, right? And we have to have continuous learning. And part of the fun of my career has been doing different things along the way, and almost disrupting myself in the process, and finding completely different paths because of that, from consulting to startup to traditional advertising to digital, so forth and so on. And going on those paths, you just have to be open-minded to it, and not everything has to happen in an instant. And I think back, you fast forward to today, and I think people are even more eager to have everything happen, in a tweet, as quickly as possible. And careers need a little time to breathe.
Exactly. I think that's awesome advice, because I think that unfortunately is a trend now that we see, especially among younger employees. They think everything has to happen now, or your life is over.
Yeah.
Or if this person tweeted at me, oh my God, it's the end of my world. They've just ended me.
Yeah.
And as opposed to the race is just not for the swift. It's like, you've got to be able to, indoor, it's like you have to sort of be a turtle. It's like what I say to my employees. It's like you've got to build up this giant shell that, like, because you're going to get things that are going to be thrown on your back, and you've got to be able to either carry it or figure out a way to get it off.
Yeah, and you can also like the other thing I was just thinking, like, you can take uncommon paths and arrive at really good places. Because I mean, you said to me in the beginning, like, young kid from Kentucky, is running a very innovative agency on Madison Avenue. Also mid-career, I was like 30, and I packed it up and went for 2.5 years to Kazakhstan and volunteered. And that's kind of mid-career. I mean, it's a really odd time to go pack up and backpack and volunteer. And I was worried about the impact it would have on my career, but I have to tell you, it had no impact on my career. I came back and hit my stride again. It was almost like a digital detox, like that. I didn't know I was taking a digital detox, but I kind of gave myself one.
So what prompted you to take that 2-year sabbatical? Was there a moment and you just like, I just get out of the U.S.?
I think I had been working in advertising, and you know how it is. I mean, pitches and the craziness. I worked at McKinsey, which is incredibly intense. And, my career was going incredibly well. And I was just like at the point where I was like, I just want to make sure that this is what I want to do. I mean, if I fast forward and it's exactly like this, and all the chapters unfold in this way, am I feeding all sides of my soul? And I at first was like, I'm just going to go take 6 months and backpack. And then I was like, you know what? I always had the idea of going into the Peace Corps. The next thing I was on the website, I'm filling out the application, and 8 months later, I'm living in Urals, Kazakhstan. So there you have it. I'm glad I did it. I mean, it was a great experience. But I was definitely nervous the whole time that, like, I've set myself back from a career. But I think these uncommon journeys actually propel us forward.
Yeah, absolutely, because there is no linear path. I mean, this is something I harp upon when I talk to younger people. So, like, the idea that you were going to walk into your job and walk out 25 years later with your full pension and 401k is just not it anymore. It's like you were going to have a bumpy, wild, and crazy ride before you even hit 30, much less 35, 40, 45, 50. And you just got to be okay with, going along for the ride and wherever that may take you. Because if you don't, it's like, you're going to be sorely disappointed. I mean, like, I wouldn't, as crazy as my ride has been in this industry, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, because I've gotten to be in some amazing places, experienced some things that I would never had I just decided to become a lawyer and go down that path. So I think it's so impactful to be able to sort of take the journey wherever it may lead you. So what's the one thing you learned when you were in Kazakhstan that surprised you?
That I could make it 27 months volunteering.
Step one. Yes.
That definitely surprised me. Look, it was Kazakhstan is an amazing country, amazing people. Break away from the Soviet Union. The thing that I think is, and I think we all know this, but it's easy to forget. It doesn't, and definitely in this world that is so polarized as what we have today, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. It doesn't matter, what background people are from, what language they speak, what they look like. At the end of the day, we're all humans, and we will laugh about the same things. We will cry about the same things, and you find that amazing commonality at a human level. And that became so apparent to me when you shed everything and you become incredibly vulnerable. You move to a foreign land, you live like a local, and you find these amazing moments out of things that you in the busy life in New York would have never, you probably would have never even had those moments, because you would have never let them into the box that we sometimes design for ourselves, which are very tight. And I think that's a lesson we all need, and I think it's a lesson that maybe we need reminding of on a regular basis throughout our life journey.
Awesome. So true. So it's like, get the heck out of your comfort zone and just go.
Right.
So what's next for Sparks and Honey? So you guys are 8 years in, you're killing it. You've got offices in a few different states. What's on the road for you guys next?
Yeah, so I mean, we're as you mentioned, we're in New York and we're in LA. We are expanding our consulting business pretty rapidly. I mean, we have some incredible clients. We're doing some really interesting work with the World Economic Forum, with Aspen Institute, a whole series of partners. One of the things we're working on now with the World Economic Forum is in Precision Consumers 2030, looking at biometrics and genomics and the microbiome and what that new set of data is going to do with the way we create personalized experiences out in the world. And so we're looking at expanding those bodies of knowledge. And then probably the second piece is we're launching our SaaS platform. So as I mentioned, it's 60 days in. We're taking it out to definition partners. We are launching it to key agencies within Omnicom as a standalone platform. And I think that's a new business for us. It's almost, I feel like I'm back 8 years ago because we built this consulting business. Now we have a SaaS business, and the structure and the way we go about selling and putting those businesses together are different. They also complement each other very well, but they have some uniqueness in each of them. And then the third, Omnicom has a very important platform that they've created called Omni, and Omni is fueling the biggest clients across Omnicom, and this platform that we've created is part of that suite of tools and technology. So, it's almost like three different ways that we're providing products and services back out to the marketplace.
Awesome. So cool. And so my final question for you is, we know that everybody, especially when you work in advertising and marketing, needs to escape and get the heck out of the office.
Yep.
So where is Terry's place? And I know that you're on Madison Avenue, so it's almost like you're back in Mad Men.
Yep.
Where do you go to get away, have a drink, or just have some quiet Terry time? Because that's it's a mode of self-care at this point.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm a big believer in finding the time to recharge. The principles of managing your energy, not your time. I think as I said about the digital detox, you've got to find those times where you give yourself to be the best you, but you can't be the best you 100% of the time, right? I mean, because you're going to drain yourself if you try to be on like that. So, the thing that I try to do is escape into nature. We talk about the trend of forest bathing. I really believe in it. I mean, I try to get upstate and hike, kayak, canoe, be out in the gardens, and that gives me energy. It kind of replenishes my energy. I try to turn off, the email and the text and Slack for those periods of time when I'm doing that. And it rejuvenates your energy. And when you come back in, you can give a lot more when you create that balance. But I love to be out just in the middle of nature, especially when we live in New York. And so, you're surrounded. It's like an anthropological study every time you walk outside the office building. I mean, there's so many amazing things going on, which I love equally, but you need the balance.
Trees. So basically,
there we go. Tree hugger. You got it.
You need to see some grass. You need to breathe that air that is not polluted by 1,000 cars every 10 seconds.
Exactly.
I think it's incredible. I'm more of a spa girl myself, but being outdoors, I feel like I'm going to get stung. But that's just me because,
Well, I would never turn away a nice spa. So there we go.
All right, okay. All right.
I'll join you for a spa day.
Don't tempt me, because but Terry, thank you so much. This was a phenomenal conversation, and really, really impactful. And we'll share links to Sparks and Honey and how you can watch the Facebook Live twice a week within the show notes. And thank you so much for a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Great. Thank you, guys.